There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and another book review. I haven't done one of these in 2024. I kind of got out of the habit, but I'm dying to tell you about this book I just finished yesterday. I read it in less than a week. It's a graphic memoir and it knocked my socks off. It is called Feeding Ghosts by Tessa Hulls. It's a library book. I've marked the heck out of it, and it was a deeply impactful read, especially for me, who is someone who doesn't read a lot of graphic literature. And I just love this with all my heart. Tessa Hulls is a biracial Asian American artist, writer, and adventurer, self-described. And she has written a memoir about the three generations of Asian and biracial Asian women in her family. She was born in a small town in California. She was the only non-white student, mixed race. She had a Caucasian father who doesn't really show up in this memoir at all. And her mother, a Chinese immigrant, was also biracial, the product of her mother's liaison with a Swiss diplomat back in China. The grandmother, I'll start using some names here, Sun Yi, came of age just as the Communist Revolution was breaking out in Shanghai, and she was a journalist. Well, you only need to know about three things about communism and other totalitarian, doesn't matter left or right, but you only have to know about three things about those kind of heinous governing styles to realize that Sun Yi was persecuted horribly as the communists came to power. The confessions and imprisonment and all the terrible things they did to her, it's described so vividly here, and I've read about those kind of things. I'm certainly no expert in Chinese history, but I'm very interested in it, and it was revisiting some of that same historical detail, but in such a personal way. Sun Yi, Tessa Hulls' grandmother, escaped to Hong Kong in the 50s, I believe, bringing her mixed-race daughter, Rose, the writer's mother, with her. And that is where Rose came of age. Editing Sean here, I am about to say that Sun Yi, the author's grandmother, wrote a best-selling novel. That is not true. It was a best-selling memoir. Sun Yi, the grandmother, wrote a best-selling novel of all of the terrible traumatic experiences she had in China. And by the end of writing it, she collapsed into a mental breakdown, a debilitating mental illness from which she never emerged, and she lived into her 80s. Tessa's mother, Rose, eventually came to America, and once she got established, she sent for her unwell mother, who had been institutionalized at that point for many years, and started her own family, including Tessa. Tessa and her mother had a terrible relationship, just one of the most conflictual, two ships passing in the night kind of relationship, and it's one that's familiar to me in reading I've done, mostly fictional reading, about the immigrant parent, and especially the immigrant mother and the American daughter, and all of the things that can go wrong there. And Tessa Hulls explores all of that. She just makes it so damn interesting, because I can think of so many novels I've read about it. Do I need to read any more? Well, when it came to what Tessa Hulls had to say, I absolutely did, and I'm so glad. This is a book that I eventually want to get my own copy, and I'll be referring to it again and again. One of the things that makes it such a personal reading experience is that Tessa Hulls is the narrator and the main character. She's on every page. And she addresses the reader and says, I think this is you might be a little bit cynical about this, or it's hard to explain, but it makes it personable. It was a personable read. Does that make sense, using that adjective? That's the one that rings the truest for me, having just emerged from the wonder and the awe of reading this book. By the time Tessa graduates high school, she and her mother are barely speaking. They're just screaming at each other. And so Tessa develops a real, what she calls cowboy persona or personality, and she spends several years in Antarctica and Alaska and Ghana, just one of those wanderers, one of those adventurers, but she always feels a sense of guilt or a calling to come back home, and so that's what this memoir is about. The process of, she doesn't use the word reconciliation, but I think that word kind of fits, and in the most unsentimental way possible, healing the relationship with her mother through together exploring the history of what happened to the grandmother, Sun Yi, back in China, and then her progression through and how mental health, mental illness was constructed during those decades, and Sun Yi as a writer, which resonates with the author, her granddaughter, Tessa Hulls. All of that is explored. I would say in particular the history of China. Just wonderful. I have read about it. I've read nonfiction. I've read fictional accounts of it. And again, not holding myself out as an expert, but as somebody who has read somewhat widely, this was just done so well. It was so moving. It's very rare for me to get verklempt from something I'm reading in a graphic book, and that happened time and time again in this novel. The other thing is it's so naked. She reveals so much of herself, almost to a fault, which I'll get into in a minute, that I found myself judging some of her opinions. And, well, in fact, I'm going to get into it right now. I found myself judging some of her opinions about her grandmother at a certain point as she's uncovering facts, things she didn't know about her grandmother's life and some of the decisions and compromises that her grandmother had to make. And she's quite judgmental. Also, there's, I would say, the only flaw that I found in this, but even that I'm going to raise it and then bat it away, is that our protagonist, Tessa Hulls, is really, really intellectual and analytical of the family dynamics. So there's a lot of psychology in here, and I would say there was a few times, just a few, where my eyes started to glaze over. Oh my God, can we just skip over some of this psychological analysis, please? But I'm going to bat that away because this memoir traces Tessa Hull's evolution where she comes to a different place. I'm not going to say anything about the place she comes to, but she very much does. And it's a journey you take with her. It's wonderful. I just thought it was so profoundly vibrant and important. So I'm going to take you through and show you some of the quotes. It's kind of hard to show quotes and the illustrations that go with them, but I'm going to show you a few. Here's one that it's kind of a commonplace insight, but said extremely well. It's the great tragedy of immigrant parents. They open the door for us, and we betray them by walking through it and becoming children of a different world. Tessa Hull's talking about her own adolescence in this small town where she's the only non-white kid. Like any kid raised outside of mainstream culture, I had the scent of difference on me. And when my age hit double digits, well, children that age are like sharks. Difference is blood in the water. And somebody who grew up gay in a homophobic small town, boy, that one sure hit home. This one, I don't need to show you the graphic, but this, I just love this. She's talking about all the traveling she did, and she's a big reader, of course. So she says, I have a long-standing travel tradition of bringing only one book from home to start a trip. After that, I only read what crosses my path. Serendipity emerges as a teacher, showing me questions I didn't realize I was already beginning to ask. I love that. I think I've unconsciously done that. And I'm not probably going to do very much traveling in the rest of my life. Maybe I will, but that speaks to me as a reader who sometimes books vibrate at me or wink at me or jump off the shelf at me, and I know that it's time to read that book. And then she goes on to give examples, one of which was, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Is it Sun Tzu, The Art of War? And she finds a passage in there that really speaks to the knot she's trying to untie in understanding the family dynamic among these 3 generations of women in her family. And I thought, oh my God, maybe I do want to read The Art of War after all these years. And the last one I'll read to you is very short, and none of these are spoilery, but it's near the end of the book. It's much easier to call someone crazy than it is to truly face the magnitude of how they were wounded by the past. So, I haven't probably touched enough in this review on how much mental health and mental illness is explored, interrogated, problematized, giving so many insights, things that I never thought of. In addition to all of that fabulous Asian and an Asian American cultural, racial history and experience. This was an absolutely incredible reading experience, one which I recommend with all my heart. Thanks for watching.